students, I welcome you all in this practical lecture of pharmacology and toxicology. So in today's practical lecture we will take the experiment number 16. So aim of this experiment is to observe and study the effect of strychnine sulfate on voluntary muscle of frog by using CD of MSBT.
Aim of this experiment is to study the effect of non-metallic environmental toxicants like strychnine on frog. Objectives of this experiment are to identify the neurons involved in response cycle, to understand selective blockade caused by strychnine, to correlate inhibition of stretch response with CNS stimulation, to learn the physiology of stretch reflex.
Requirement for this experiment, we need animal frog, drug and chemical strychnine sulfate solution 2 to 4 mg per kg, glacial acetic acid, instruments or equipments we need stand with clamp, syringe and needle, beaker, etc.
Reflex action means an instantaneous protective response of nervous system to a stimulus. Reflex action is an inevitable function of spinal cord. The simplest reflex arc involves a sensory neuron, a connector neuron, a motor neuron, and an interneuron. Spinal nerve carry the nerve impulses from the spinal cord to groups of voluntary muscle fibers.
Okay, so here it is the definition of reflex action. What is meant by reflex action? So this reflex action, it is an involuntary response. Okay, so it is an involuntary response to a stimulus. Okay, any kind of stimulus is there. So this stimulus conveyed to the nervous system by the passage of excitation potential from receptor to muscle or gland. Okay. So it is an potential which is carried in the form of impulses, okay, through the from the receptor to the muscles organ. Okay. So this reflex action, it is an inevitable function of spinal cord. Okay, and the simplest reflex arc which involves which type of neurons are involved into that reflex arc, that includes sensory neuron, connector neuron, motor neuron and interneuron. Okay, so in this image you have to see clearly that the different type of neurons, sensory neuron is there, then interneuron is there, connector neuron is there and motor neuron is there. Okay, so spinal nerves carry the nerve impulses from spinal cord to the group of voluntary muscles. Okay, so any reflex action, it is an involuntary in nature and the potential or impulses carry from the receptor, that is from spinal nerves towards to the muscle fibers, right, that is to the effector organ.
When the arc involving sensory neuron, connector neuron, motor neuron is completed, acetylcholine is released at the neuromuscular junction. As a result, contraction of a group of voluntary muscle fibers occurs. At the same time, another arc is completed in between the sensory neuron, interneuron, and motor neuron. As a result, relaxation of antagonistic muscle occurs due to action of glycine on interneuron within the spinal cord. Glycine is an inhibitory neurotransmitter of spinal cord.
What happens if any type of stimulus is occurring on our body? What happens? So when the arc involving the sensory neuron, connector neuron and motor neuron, okay, म्हणजे जेव्हा एखादे इम्पल्सेस आहेत ते सेन्सरी न्यूरॉन थ्रू, कनेक्टर न्यूरॉन थ्रू, मोटर न्यूरॉन कडे जर कॅरी करत असतील आणि असा जर आर्क कंप्लीट होत असेल तर त्या नर्व एंडिंगला ॲसिटाइलकोलिन हे न्यूरोट्रान्समीटर रिलीज होतं ॲट द न्यूरोमस्क्युलर जंक्शन, जिथे नर्व आणि मसल्सचं जंक्शन झालेलं आहे, कनेक्शन झालेलं आहे, त्या रिजनला ॲसिटाइलकोलिन रिलीज होतं. ओके, सो ड्यू टू द रिलीज ऑफ दॅट ॲसिटाइलकोलिन दॅट रिझल्ट्स इन टू अ कॉन्ट्रॅक्शन ऑफ ग्रुप ऑफ व्हॉलंटरी मसल फायबर्स. ओके, मग जिथे ते मसल्स फायबर्स त्या ठिकाणीचे प्रेझेंट्स आहेत त्यांचं कॉन्ट्रॅक्शन दिसून येते. ओके, सो एखाद्या पर्टिक्युलर स्टिम्युलसला ही ऍक्शन आपल्या बॉडीमध्ये दिसून येते. ओके, रिफ्लेक्स आर कंप्लीट होतं बाय कनेक्टिंग in the sensory neuron, connector neuron and motor neuron. Okay, so हे एक ऍक्शन कंप्लीट झाल्यानंतर त्याच वेळेला सेम ऍट द सेम टाइम अनदर आर्क इज कंप्लीटेड. ओके, सो कोणत्या कोणत्या न्यूरॉन्स मध्ये अनदर आर्क कंप्लीट होतं? इट इन्क्लूड्स sensory neuron, interneuron and motor neuron. Okay, and when this arc is completed, that shows the effect on the antagonistic muscles. जे muscles आधी due to the release of acetylcholine contract झालेले आहेत, that antagonistic muscles get relaxed. Okay, and this occurs due to the action of glycine on the interneuron within the spinal cord. Okay, मग interneuron चे इथे glycine हे न्यूरोट्रान्समीटर रिलीज झाल्यामुळे म्हणजे स्पायनल कॉर्ड रिजन मध्ये इंटरन्यूरॉनच्या इथे ग्लायसिन हे न्यूरोट्रान्समीटर रिलीज होतं अँड ड्यू टू दिस that glycine shows effect on the antagonistic muscles, that relaxation of antagonistic muscles takes place. Okay, so glycine is an inhibitory neurotransmitter of spinal cord. Okay, so what is the glycine? So it is a neurotransmitter. Which type of neurotransmitter? It is an inhibitory neurotransmitter. Okay, म्हणजे एखादं स्टिम्युलस जर आपल्या बॉडीवर जी ऍक्शन शो झाली तर हे दोन रिफ्लेक्स आर्क कंप्लीट होऊन बॉडी ऍक्शन शो करते. ओके, फर्स्ट काय होणार आहे मीन्स एखादी टाचणी जर आपल्या पायाला टोचली तर आपले मसल्स त्या जिथे टाचणी टोचलेली आहे तिकडचे मसल्स जे आहेत ते कॉन्ट्रॅक्ट होणार आहे आणि नंतर आपोआप त्यांचं रिलॅक्सेशन होतं. ओके, सो ड्यू टू this neuromuscular junction completing of this reflex arc. Okay, and due to this contraction and relaxation of that muscles takes place, right?
Strychnine is a selective and competitive antagonist of glycine. Therefore, it blocks the postsynaptic inhibitory sites, that is, interneurons, and blocks the relaxation of antagonistic muscles. Whereas activity of acetylcholine on voluntary muscles is continued. Thus, excitatory effect is observed upon administration of strychnine. It should be remembered that the CNS stimulant effect of strychnine doesn't result from direct synaptic excitation, but it is by selective blockade of inhibition.
Okay, so in this image you have to clearly see that two type of reflex arc. Okay, so first that includes the sensory neuron, connector neuron and motor neuron, right? And another reflex arc is completed with sensory neuron, interneuron and motor neuron is there. Okay, so strychnine is a drug we use for this purpose, for the study of that effect. Strychnine is a selective competitive antagonist of glycine. Okay, so this strychnine is a CNS stimulant drug, right? So it acts by the selective and competitive antagonist of the glycine. Okay, means it selectively blocks the glycine action by making the competition with the glycine, and it blocks their receptors and block their action. Okay, so therefore it blocks the postsynaptic inhibitory sites, that is interneuron, and blocks the relaxation of antagonistic muscles. Okay, so one reflex arc complete झाल्यामुळे काय होणार आहे, स्टिम्युलस मुळे वन रिफ्लेक्स आर्क कंप्लीट झाल्यामुळे ते जे मसल्स आहेत त्यांचं कॉन्ट्रॅक्शन होतं, राईट? ऍट द सेम टाइम सेकंड रिफ्लेक्स आर्क कंप्लीट होऊन ग्लायसिन रिलीज होऊन त्यांचं रिलॅक्सेशन होणं गरजेचं आहे. ओके, बट स्ट्रिचनिन इंजेक्ट केल्यामुळे काय होतं, स्ट्रिचनिन जे आहे ते ऍट द सेम टाइम जे सेकंड आर्क कंप्लीट होतं त्याच्यामध्ये जे ग्लायसिन रिलीज होणार आहे त्याला ते ब्लॉक करतं, राईट? सो इट इज अन अँटागोनिस्ट ऑफ दॅट ग्लायसिन. सो ड्यू टू द blocking the glycine action, the relaxation of that contracted muscles is prevented. Okay, so muscles are remain in contraction position. Okay, so this excitatory effect is observed upon administration of strychnine. Okay, and it should be remembered that CNS stimulant effect of strychnine doesn't result from the direct synaptic excitation. Okay, as the strychnine is a CNS stimulant drug, but the CNS stimulant effect is not due to the direct action on the sympathetic or synaptic excitation. Okay, but it acts as a CNS stimulant due to the selective blockage of inhibitory neurotransmitter, that is glycine. Okay, so this is the action of strychnine on the skeletal muscles. So we will see now procedure of this effect of stretching on the skeletal muscles of frog, right? So we will proceed for the procedure.
To study the effect of stretching, take the frog. Hold the frog on a stand with a clamp. Now, dip one of the legs of the frog in glacial acetic acid and observe the stretching of the leg in upward direction. Since glacial acetic acid produces irritation and pain, the frog gives response by stretching its leg. Inject 0.1 ml of strychnine sulfate solution intraperitoneally. After 1 minute, once again dip the leg of frog in glacial acetic acid and observe its response. Now, observe the response. You will notice that the movement of frog's leg is in upward direction. Remember, for any movement, alternate contraction and relaxation of voluntary muscle is a must. Repeat the same procedure after injecting 0.2, 0.3 and 0.4 ml doses of strychnine sulfate solution. At certain dose, the frog doesn't show any movement of its leg. This means that strychnine sulfate has stimulated the spinal cord by producing excitatory effect on voluntary muscles of abdomen and leg, causing a state of permanent contraction. Therefore, the frog has not responded to glacial acetic acid. Hence, strychnine sulfate is CNS stimulant.
Okay, so from this procedure, you can understand the effect of stretching on the skeletal muscles. Okay, so the stretching is a CNS stimulant drug. It shows their effect on the skeletal muscles. That is, it causes the permanent contraction of that skeletal muscles. Right. Then next. So this is the observation table for effect of stretching on the skeletal muscles, right? So first is for normal when glacial acetic acid, there is a stretching of the legs. Okay, मग जेव्हा कोणताही ड्रग त्या फ्रॉगला दिलेला नसणार आहे तेव्हा जर त्याचा लेग आपण ग्लासियल ॲसिडिक मध्ये जर ऍड केला, सो ग्लासियल ॲसिडिक इज यूज ॲज अन केमिकल इरिटंट, राईट? सो इट causes the pain or it causes the paining sensation to the frog, right? So that's why it's stretching of the legs takes place. Okay, then next is strychnine sulfate drug. We can inject 0.1 ml of dose. So glacial acetic acid मध्ये जसा leg dip केला आपण, stretching of leg in upward direction but slow relaxation is there. Okay, means muscle contraction होणार आहे but त्याचं relaxation आहे ते slowly होणार आहे. Okay, if we inject 0.2 ml of strychnine sulfate, when we dip the leg of this frog into the glacial acetic acid, there will be a slow leg movements are there. Okay, at the dose of 0.3 ml, when we dip the leg of that frog into the glacial acetic acid, further decrease into the leg movements. Okay, and when we inject 0.4 ml of strychnine sulfate, and when we dip the frog leg into the glacial acetic acid, no leg movement is there. Okay, so stretching of the leg is inhibited. So this effect is due to the permanent contraction of that muscles, right? So these are the observation for the different doses of strychnine sulfate. Okay, so from this observation table we can easily conclude that this strychnine sulfate causes the depression of spinal cord, right? So it is an CNS depressant drug, so that's why it causes the depression effect on the spinal cord and it causes the contraction of that voluntary muscles, right? So what we have learned from this experiment?
What you have learned: to name the neurons involved in in stimulus-response cycle. To understand that stretch reflex is due to contraction and relaxation of alternate groups of voluntary muscles. To understand the state of permanent contraction. Strychnine stimulates CNS by inhibiting inhibitory neurotransmitter glycine. Strychnine is classified under CNS stimulant category. Strychnine is a poisonous drug and never used in therapeutics. Any accidental consumption or deliberate administration of strychnine is characterized by rigorous convulsions produced in the body. If not treated in time, may cause death.
Okay, so here it is the end of this experiment. Okay.